6:21 approaching 6:22 in Trinidad and Tobago. Good to have you with us on this Wednesday with all the many different options that you have available to you. Well, so let's move into our first discussion, because just about everyone knows someone who has been impacted by domestic violence, or perhaps you yourself, you're either a victim, or if you prefer to use the term, you want to refer to as a survivor rather than as a victim. A societal sore that many countries are struggling to deal with. It affects not only victims, but also those in your immediate circle. The topic has once again made its way into the Parliament, and the Domestic Violence Act was debated in the Senate on Monday, not Tuesday, as we had said initially. It was Monday, actually. To give us some tips on how to deal with its impact on the family unit is clinical traumatologist and clinical therapist Hanif Benjamin, who looks as if he visited his barber, and indeed, very well put together. No sign of Zoe the dog, though, but who knows, she might turn up at some point during the interview. Very good morning to you, Mr. Benjamin. Thanks for joining us.
Blessed good morning, Fazeer. I did visit the barber, thank you. I tried a new look, so we're going to see how that works. And Zoe is home, so I'm at the office already for this interview. So a very good morning to you and all of Trinidad and Tobago.
Good morning to you. And you said new look, but sadly, same old situation, probably even worse when it comes to domestic violence. And I suppose the intention is, Mr. Benjamin, not to just repeat the things that you've said many times before, but really to ask ourselves, you know, are we doing the right things, or are we, even if we're recommending the right things, are we implementing the right things to give support to people who might be victims, or to actually prevent these things from happening in the first place?
Fazeer, I think you're quite correct, because this is not the first time that we are speaking about this. And we have spoken so many times about what it is, and I consider it to be the rhetoric. I have been to so many conferences and symposia about domestic violence. And every time I go there, I hear the same rhetoric over and over. Build more shelters for women, pass more laws, and tell women to move, to run away, to leave. And I often ask myself, what exactly are we trying to do with this? And so I'm happy that you have moved into that direction, because I think we all know the psychological, the emotional, the physical, the financial damage to a family, an individual, a society, as we treat with domestic violence. I think we know too well, Fazeer, what are the pain and hurt that we are seeing. Now, I must commend the government for bringing this bill to Parliament, because it is much needed law. But, Fazeer, to be quite honest with you, we cannot legislate emotions. We cannot legislate emotion. We have tried legislation for quite some time. While it is needed and it is important, it cannot be a standalone. There must be other critical pieces of things, element that moves with it. And so today, I want to focus on what can we do as a society to help the scourge of this very difficult situation. And the reason why I say it's difficult, because we are also dealing with an underpinning of cultural and religious nuances that many of us are not willing to speak about. We have a situation where leaving a divorce is a sin, and for some, you don't have an option of leaving. But yet we want to legislate or put into laws and stuff like that. We have to understand all that encompasses. So, Fazeer, you heard me mention before that we are treating a 360-degree problem with a 180-degree solution. We are treating a 360-degree problem with a 180-degree solution. And if we continue to do that, we will never see the end of violence against person, whether it is in a marriage or not.
And when you have a situation, and I'm glad you see the value in moving our discussion that, because as you said correctly, legislators will do what legislators will do, whether we agree with them or we disagree with them. The fact is that we are living out here. And I suppose, Mr. Benjamin, the question that we probably need to, which again will sound repetitive, but I don't know why we don't see the need to really address these societal issues, as you refer to them, that creates the environment that makes someone, in most cases men, feel that they are entitled to beat somebody, that if someone looks to leave, that they can't leave without me damaging them or finishing them off. It's either you belong to me or you belong to nobody. What are the triggers that create that societal acceptance? Because it is acceptance, because it continues, that creates this societal acceptance of the violent attacks towards women especially and children. And how do you deal with that? Because you could pass as many laws as you want. If society covertly or overtly accepts that norm, nothing is going to change.
Fazeer, you are 100% correct. And so the time has come for us to sit around the table and have real conversation, 360 degrees conversation, where you have the religious leaders. Because a big part of domestic violence, while it is perpetrated in the home, it is somewhat shunned at the church level or the religious level when people try to leave or divorce or situations like that. And so we need to bring the legislators, the religious leaders, the community leaders, the scholars around the table in the first instance. But Fazeer, I want to go back, because in order for us to understand that whole situation that you spoke about, we have to consider how we culture our children. What are we teaching them? And I remember Canada from the Harlem Children's Zone once said how we put boys in a box and how we culture our boys and how they grow up. And then when they reach the age of 18, we expect someone else. You are saying to your boy child all the time that they should take charge, they shouldn't be names that you will call them, and so they do that. And so when they get to 18 years, having practiced for so many years, we now want a perfect husband or perfect boyfriend. It doesn't work like that. We are still teaching our children about blue and pink, and this is what you need to do. Our boys are still being cultured in a particular way. So in order for us to begin the change in our society, we must begin by the way we culture our children to understand. The second thing we must understand is children are sponges. And when a domestic violence situation occurs over and over and over, that is what our children will learn. The boys will learn what to do in terms of how they want respect, and the girls will learn who they want to be with. And that might be overt or covert, subconscious or conscious. And so we need to understand what we are in fact doing to families. Then we have shame and guilt that comes along with domestic violence. So a woman or the victim may not speak to their family, they may not tell their family what is going on because of the shame and guilt, because we don't want to break up the marriage, because we don't want the church to know, because we don't want this. And so you continue to live in a very vile environment that is unhealthy for everybody. And so the culture that we have accepted must change. We must begin to examine society, examine our role, examine the family in relation to domestic violence, and we need to be real about it. And Fazeer, I want to go where most really don't want to go, and people may want to say what they say this morning. But the truth is, we need to understand the underlying emotion that is, and I want to give a story to tell this, a real-time story. A young man has now gone to jail for 6 months. Why did he go to jail for 6 months? Because he was violent towards the girl. He was violent towards the girl because there was a restraining order against him. But here it is. For 7 months, the girl came to him for random sex. He dropped her to work. He bought groceries. They went to the grocery together until that point where they got bad again. They got bad again. And no one understood what was going on. The psychological and emotional abuse he went through. And in the violent situation, she reported it, and he was then arrested for violating a protection order that she violated. So when we really understand what is going on, we need to look at all sides, the 360 approach. And that is why this morning, I want to recommend, in addition to the legislation, we need specialized court systems where it is not just punitive measures, but a more restorative measure that will examine all the factors around these domestic violence cases. We hear a situation where the perpetrator was once a victim, the victim was once a perpetrator, and the cycle continues for you. But we are not exploring those nuances. So he is now sitting in jail. His 3 children have to suffer that now, when she would have come back to him and back and forth, but nobody's listening. Nobody's hearing this. And so I commend the TTPS for that new unit led by Shireen Pollard and Inspector Guy Allen. But we need to do more for Fazeer. We need to understand how the entire tapestry, or what I call the 360 approach, is going to help us fix the issues.
And you know, Mr. Benjamin, the way you've just encapsulated it, I could already hear in my ears people saying, like, you want to blame the woman for this? Like, this is victim blaming that you're trying here. But you see, this is what happens. Let's say, even if you want to go the approach that you're suggesting, even if you want to take a glass of clear, clean, crystal spring water to try to cleanse us of our toxic mentalities and so on, you are using 1 glass of water to try to cleanse 10,000 gallons of toxic sludge, because the society accepts this. The society celebrates the way women and men relate to each other sexually and use one another and so on. And mainstream media, online media and so on, general society accepts it. So the question I want to pose to you is, while our legislators might be well-meaning, how much talk or how much consultation with religious leaders or whatever, or how many people around the table will really make a difference to a very toxic environment?
Well, firstly, we must start somewhere. And as I said, we are seeing the movement. I mean, we have the legislation, we have the TTPS police unit, but those are designed to deal with the criminal nature of what we deal with. The criminal nature of what we deal with is already too late. If we have to now have a legislation and our police unit, it means that we are already too late. So we need to roll it back. We need to bring in the people who are most relevant to this situation. I mean, I'm fed up here in the build more shelters and telling women to move and think. We have moved past that. We must understand that in a domestic violence situation, while there are perpetrator and a victim, you have to understand it in context of what is going on. Family lawyers can tell you how men are treated, how women are treated, how children are treated, because they are dealing with the situation. We are only hearing and dealing with one part. And because we are dealing with that 180, we are not getting the results that we need. You need to have a specialized court system with specialized judicial officers and support system that can help the people through their challenges. Because at the end of the day, Fazeer, we are talking about family. We are talking about precious children who will suffer significant psychological and traumatic losses. We are talking about females, we are talking about males, we are talking about partners who will suffer the indignity of being beaten and bruised and battered. And you know, Fazeer, people are again going to attack me, but I really find that the lash is the most insignificant part of all of this. For me, the critical analysis is the damage that is done psychologically, emotionally, and traumatically. Those are the scars that will live on long after the bruised eye or the bruised ribs. The psychological impact on our children when they go down in their schoolwork, when women have to leave their job, when men have to leave their job, when communities are now embroiled in this bacchanal and bacchanalia. Those are the real scourges that we are not addressing. But we prefer to not have the difficult conversation, as with most other difficult conversation in this country. And the time has come seriously for us to all these seminars and webinars and all these things to look at the real root causes of why a family is embroiled in this level of violence. And so we need specialized people, specialized units, specialized places to help through this. Because I want to repeat this for you. We cannot legislate emotion. You could put $2 million fine. When I feel emotionally dysregulated, how am I going to treat with that? We need to make places available for victim and perpetrator to get help. We need to open up community mediation to every single community in Trinidad and Tobago. We need to have specialized mediation to treat with family issues. We need to have places where these issues can be caught long before it turns into a serious level of toxicity.
I'll ask you just to pause for a minute, Mr. Benjamin, because we have to take a break, but we're going to come back for a few minutes still with you, because I think it's important that we get home this point that yes, legislation is important. Yes, it's important to put all these systems in place, but you really need, as you said, you can't legislate emotion. But we'll get some more from Mr. Benjamin when we come back right after this break at 6:37. 6:41 in Trinidad and Tobago. Let's return to our discussion with clinical traumatologist Hanif Benjamin. Mr. Benjamin, in continuing the theme of our discussion, which is trying to take it beyond just the trotting all over the same thing ground again and again and again, and trying to stimulate something that could really result in real action as far as violence, domestic violence, and so on, and the 360 approach that you're talking about. What other points would you like to highlight in the time that we have available?
I think it is important to understand context in relation to perpetrator and victim. At what point did a perpetrator become a perpetrator? What moved that person to become who they are? And so a clinical approach is very much needed. And that is why I'm advocating to have social workers and psychologists throughout the community where people can go to make this readily available at ministries. But more importantly, Fazeer, we need to get a greater understanding of the religious factor into all of this and how they might also be able to help. Fazeer, we must have a serious conversation about community impact and community intervention, right? We have moved to a place where people are now closing their blinds and turning up the volume on their radio because they don't want to get involved. So we need to also, in addition to the punitive side of this, we must also get to the social and psychosocial side of this so that we can get a greater understanding of the issues that are pervasive. People just don't wake up in the morning and start to beat people. It starts long before. And so we need to figure out why is it. We need to do a lot more studies in terms of the people sitting in jail for these things and figure out what can we learn from them so that we can help people to not go down those same roads. We need to remove the stigma behind domestic violence or in front of it. The only way we can really get to the root cause of these problems is by removing the stigma, by removing and denouncing vehemently the culture or the culture behind domestic violence as well. And we need to also seriously tackle the religious sector in relation to the understanding of domestic violence and divorce and these kind of things. We need to understand that there are factors within a society that must aid in the recovery. But more importantly, it must also aid in the recovery of both victim and perpetrator, 360. Because if we just jail the perpetrator, that person comes back out, either go back to that family or find a new family to terrorize again without receiving the psychological and trauma help that they need. And so those are some of the basic things as a society we must do in addition to the laws that we are passing, in addition to the police unit. We must also, as I said, the Honorable CJ, a very astute thinking gentleman, and he must know that we should put a court that is designed to treat with this situation, because this situation is tough for everybody. And so we need to have specialized people who can provide the level of counseling and guidance that is needed so that families can be brought back together. Domestic violence is one of the greatest destroyer of families in the modern world, the greatest destroyer. First, you are isolated, or your family move away because this is too much bacchanal. I can't handle all the cussing and the shame. And so family pull away from you, and then your children start to suffer. They start to suffer from a community, a school, a church level. You pull away from the church because you probably don't like what they're saying to you, or you don't want anybody to know your business. And so domestic violence is one of the greatest destroyer of family. And if we understand it from that perspective, we understand the 360 approach and tackle it from that perspective, then we will see positive move. But one, which is the punitive side of things, cannot be the only pillar. We need to get the restorative side of things, the psychological side of things, the community side of things, in order to hold up our society.
Mr. Benjamin, we have to leave it there for the moment. And I mean, you've touched on a lot of things, and indeed, we really need to move beyond just the advocacy and the talk. Not that it's not important, but we need to see action. We need to see a change in the way we do things. Unless we want to keep coming every Wednesday to say the same issue and raise the same point over and over and over again. But thanks very much for making yourself available. Say hello to Zoe the dog for us, and hopefully everything goes well in your family circle as well. Thanks very much, Hanif Benjamin, with us this morning as we come around towards 6:46, approaching 6:47 in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, here are some images from a morning trek on Lady Chancellor Hill around the Queen's Park Savannah. It would be nice to know that these images were provided to us by some of the residents of Lady Chancellor Hill, Brian Lara, for example, because he lives up there. But very, very nice images indeed. Early morning sunshine, bright blue sky, no Sahara dust haze that we could detect, and some nice flowers as well to brighten up your morning on this Wednesday at 6:47. We'll be back right after this.